All right, what's up, Texas History? This is Mr. McNair coming to you with at my home with just a shorter beard. Hope everybody's doing well. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about railroads. Try to help you with railroads. That's going to be your first lesson to get through this new Edgenuity system and the online learning that we're doing since we can't be at school right now. When we were at school, we finished Cotton Cattle Railroad, so we already talked a little bit about railroad, and I mentioned in my class some of these vocabulary words that are part of this lesson, like transcontinental. Transcontinental is where something goes all the way from east to west, so it's going to cover the entire continent, the entire United States. So this is something that back in the late 19th century, in the late 1800s, that the United States and that Texas were trying to work on. It's trying to get this transportation system that's going to just cover the entire United States. That's something that they had not had yet before. So another vocabulary word would be stagecoach. So just think of that maybe as a fancier name for wagon. So that was the main transportation back then, is just a wagon being pulled by a horse, which is a stagecoach. So if you needed to get something from point A to point B, you would have to use the fastest transportation, which was that. But they're trying to do this railroad that's going to help them be able to take what's called consumer goods, anything like physical that you can go buy in the store, consumer good. They want to be able to take that from point A to point B a lot easier, and save time, save resources, save money by doing so. And that's what the railroad's going to help. So construction on the railroad started in the 1860s. I think 1863 is what it says. The Transcontinental Railroad, the production of that started. Now, railroads had already been worked on in prior to the 1860s. Prior to, that's also the time of the Civil War. But this is the time that they want to make just one that covers the entire continent. Like I said, Transcontinental Railroad. So Abraham Lincoln, someone that we talked about during the Civil War, because when you learn about Abraham Lincoln, you learn about, okay, that's the president that was president during the Civil War. He led the United States, the Union, to victory in the Civil War, and he also ended slavery. He also helped end slavery. But something that is not really mentioned, I feel like, a whole lot, something that kind of gets put behind all this accomplishments I've already said he's had, is that he was a big part in starting the Transcontinental Railroad, that started the building of it. So we learned about the Civil War. We learned that that ended slavery, as I just mentioned with Abraham Lincoln. He helped end slavery. So anything to do with the Transcontinental Railroad, we're kind of past slavery now. So just don't worry about slavery. We're on Transcontinental Railroad. So a cool thing about Texas, since we're in Texas history, a cool thing about Texas is I mentioned in my class that during the Civil War, we're focused on war. We're focused on just unfortunately just beating each other up. So certain industries might have really suffered during the Civil War, and since everybody's worried about fighting a war, the railroad's not going to really be worked on too much during the Civil War. But one cool thing about Texas is that any progress made on railroads happened in Texas. Other than the entire United States, that it said that in Houston and in Central Texas, that's the only place they made progress on railroads during the Civil War. So, I mean, we were still trying to get things done during the Civil War. Now, to show you how important or just how much they wanted a railroad, is I can give to you through just different years. Like in 1830, I already mentioned that that's when they really started working on railroads. But again, that wasn't when they had the idea of Transcontinental Railroad. But in 1830, it said in the United States that there were 30 miles of track. So let's fast forward to when we are getting into the 1860s. 1860, that number 40 miles of track jumped up to 30,000 miles of track. So that's a big climb. But now in the 1860s, now that they want to do a transcontinental railroad, I mean, they're working hard. They're pushing to get this transcontinental railroad, a railroad that stretches from east to west, built. In 1890, it jumped from 30,000 to 165,000 miles of track. So that is a lot of railroad, a lot of hard work, and it's going to pay off. The last spike that was driven for the railroad happened in Utah, and like I said, it was a lot of hard work, and it's going to pay off. I mean, I showed a video once in my class that it said that you drive spikes with hammer, and it would take on average 3 hammer swings to drive 1 spike. So think about how many spikes, how many hammer swings you would have to do to build 165,000 miles of track, to build a railroad that's going to stretch across the entire United States. But like I said, the work's going to pay off. The railroad brought a lot of advantages. One of the advantages is that you're gonna get from point A to point B a lot faster. Before railroads, when you're just having to do, traveling through like stagecoach through wagon, for example, from New York to California, it would take you like 5 months on average to get from New York to California. But after the railroad is completed, after the Transcontinental Railroad's completed, that number went from 5 months to only 4 days. It would only take you 4 days. So you're able to, not only get across the state, but get across the United States a lot faster. Before the railroad, I mean, it was just a lot tougher to get by. Traffic wasn't an issue. Traffic wasn't an issue to, travel. It was weather. It was just the time. It was dangerous. You had Indians out there that we had issues with. The railroad just made things a lot easier. It also just let me see. Sorry. It also reduced transportation costs by 90%. So, like I said, you're having to use time, use money. You gotta pay for food. You gotta just there's cost into the traveling, and the longer that trip is, the more money you're having to spend.